All right, we
Yeah.
got people showing up. I titled this "The Greatest Citizen Journalists of Our Time." So I'm with the two greatest
Sidebar.
citizen journalists
Yeah,
of our
come
time.
on.
That's just me. That's just me. I do this every time. So Ellie goes, "Walter, you're fishing for compliments." But yeah, I wanted her to. I write the script in advance, but the lines for
Yeah,
the other
you
people, I don't tell them
don't
that
tell
that's their
me.
lines. I just
Yep.
hope for it.
Nope.
You know.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
But no, I'm delighted. I'm delighted to introduce Arturo to Ellie, and so yeah,
Yeah,
you guys are
nice to meet you.
just two of my favorites on here, and the work you do is so important. And I don't know, let's just have a session about what citizen journalists are facing right now. So somebody take over. I always prattle on and on.
Go for it, Arturo.
Man, it's actually it's pretty tough. You know, uh, even having access to, like press rooms and stuff in DC and, lawmakers and things like that, it's still it can still be pretty tough. Really just being seen is probably the hardest thing.
Mhm.
We all deal with the whole, we report on something way ahead of legacy media and essentially they kind of rip us off and don't give us any credit.
Yep.
Um, we everybody deals with that, and at some point, I mean, I guess you come to terms with it. To some degree, it's still frustrating that other people are making money off of your work, but there's not a lot you can do about it. I like to make noise about it. It helps get more eyes on my work when that happens, or when they do it to someone else, like when it's been done to Jen
Yeah.
Budd.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I make a lot of noise about it and promote her work, and that way more people are putting eyes on, the original source material. So, there are a lot of ways to try to improve our situation, and doing things like this as a community, as a group, and coming together and sharing each other's voices with our audiences is a big deal too.
Mhm.
I would agree with all of that. I think Walter knows this, but I subcontracted for the New York Times for like a decade as their
Wow.
just like a transcriber, like not a writer or anything. They have never, ever, ever once like been welcoming about publishing anything I ever wrote. But I always laugh because they do that same thing where they'll write an article about Epstein that gets a million views, and it's like, we just figured out Epstein's a pedophile. And, what I mean? It's like a
Yeah.
story that's years late, and so, like, I still know pretty significant people who work there, and I like, this week, I said, this story, because I've been working not working with, but I've been working on the story out of Hilton Head about the survivor from the '80s who was in South Carolina, and that was a big news story this week, and that story originally came out of a small newspaper called the Post and Courier, and I had been emailing them, and we'd kind of been talking, and so when they posted their article this week, they gave me credit in their article for, like, a small piece of the investigation, which was really super, but it also, like, highlights what local journalism is and how great they are.
Right.
But then their article got taken to all these bigger outlets like the Daily Beast and different things, and so that had to be included in it because they included in it, and so I was like, "Okay, that's really cool." But, like, when I've gone back to people at the New York Times and gone, "Okay, here's the original article with all the investigative material, like, you could publish this, and this is the whole story about this thing that's, like, all over the news." Consistently, even if I've known them for a decade, consistently,
Yeah.
they say, "We do not ever do contributing investigative pieces ever."
Yeah,
And I'm
that's
like, "Okay, then
crazy.
keep talking about Epstein's, like, surprise money or whatever."
Right.
I don't know.
Well, like the normalization of stuff that's just blatantly unfair seems to be everything
Yeah.
that we're kind of uncovering, like all these different mechanisms. But Arturo says he is like, we don't get to be seen, but they see us because they rip us off
Oh,
all the
yeah.
time. And I think one of the big things, one of the aspects of this independent media that's so important, and I was just talking about Arturo with this, is I interviewed Kira from the Citizens Impeachment, and like there's all these people running for office, and I've been working
Mhm.
to try and get more and more people. I want to get you on one of these calls too, Ellie. All these different candidates running for
Mhm.
office, and because the legacy media is complicit in this, where they just completely don't give any attention to certain candidates,
Right, right.
and so we have that power here. We
Yeah.
citizen journalists can elevate. And you see that with Mamdani, for example. It's like that grassroots thing. That's what we do here. And so just the more people we have to do that. I interviewed Kira from the Citizens Impeachment. since then I've had like 6 different candidates reach out to me, so it's like
That's
almost
really
like,
cool.
whoa. And when it's
Oh,
almost like I'm looking at 'em, I'm trying to,
Right.
I gotta get organized, I guess. We were laughing about time zones. I'm like, I gotta go into
You may
shapes
have
and we're time
created
zone.
a new platform for yourself. You are the place to go for, like, new
right.
candidates.
Well,
I
I
think
need
that's
you
kinda
guys.
cool.
And that's the other thing is as citizen journalists, we help each other. And I want to bring you guys onto these interviews. And the more of them we talk to and we get them involved, and I've talked to some that have been so great already. Arturo saw that one where Emily Briggy was just talking about what she's faced, like the Democratic establishment, like the Washington Democrats don't want Wisconsin to pick their own representatives because they anoint their. And then you hear all those lies about electability and they push through a candidate, and then that candidate loses because everybody in the district's mad because they didn't want that candidate, and then they blame the voters again, and then we repeat that.
Mhm.
We just have the power now to change this, and I'm kind of excited
Yeah.
about it, but it is exhausting too.
Yeah, we had a lot of that in Texas recently with the Jasmine Crockett Tallarico primary. A lot of outside, out of the state interference. You have people in, I don't know, whatever random state, trying to tell us how to do politics in Texas. And, they don't understand that we do politics very dirty here. Like, the mud is
Oh,
flying all the time. And, we just do things. Texas politics is done differently. And, you had a lot of these people like the, never Trump Republicans like Tim Miller and stuff, folks at the Bulwark, and they were pushing for Tallarico. And, it started to get real ugly. And a lot of that came from the outside. And like I said, people don't understand that we just do things dirty here. And, Jasmine Crockett got criticized for some of the things she said, from outside the state. And we're like, when, okay, for example, she called Greg Abbott Hot Wheels at one time, right?
everybody calls him that though, right?
The whole world freaked out. But dude, in Texas, even Republicans call him Hot Wheels. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? It's almost a term of endearment. So it's like outside of Texas, everybody freaked out. In Texas, we're like,
Mhm.
what's the big deal? Like we do this all the
Mhm.
time. So yeah, it was a lot of that. And you had all these people making big noise about what's seemingly benign to us. You know what I mean? It was nuts.
I think the thing that I struggle with any kind of politics is the idea of voting for people who are already popular
Yeah.
outside and much you know what I mean? Like, it's kinda like as a writer, it's kinda like when you hear that someone who's an uber celebrity wrote a book and got a publishing deal and didn't have to put any pictures in their children's books. I won't name names, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the people who already have the platform. It's the
Yeah.
whatever, homecoming queen is running for whatever, and I just so I like the idea of platforming a lot of people because people don't even realize that you get your voting ballot and you're like, "Wait, who are all these people? I
Yes.
don't know half of these people," and you start choosing people for reasons that shouldn't matter,
Yes.
um, and so I think that's really important because I am so tired of voting for celebrities. Like, I'm just tired of it. I don't think I want somebody who's gone to law school. Maybe they don't have to go to law school, but I want somebody who understands politics. I don't want them to be here because,
Right.
their platform already carried them. I don't want wealthy people running the country and telling people how to spend their money or how much money they get or like what services they should have because they've never dealt with those. Like, I want
Right.
people who've actually dealt with the services to make decisions about the services. I want, women to make decisions about women's bodies. I know that's cliche. Like, I want the people who actually apply to the things that we're voting on to be the people who are platforming them. And I just don't think we've ever been there.
Yeah,
We
that's
don't
a
need
good point.
Yeah, and we don't need wealthy people that come to these independent platforms either. That's another thing I think is just
Yeah.
Mm,
bizarre. And like, you can do a
definitely.
search. You can Google search, see what a guy's worth. Like if somebody jumps on Substack and they're worth $80 million, they don't need your $8 a month.
Wow.
I I, I need your eight
I
bucks a
know.
month, please. Don't
Yeah.
give it to it's
I
stuff
know.
like
I was terrified because today there was, like, some big announcement that TMZ was gonna have, like, a political team, and I was like, "Damn it, if they come to Substack
yeah,
and they're like, 'We're TMZ Substack,' I'm just
yeah.
gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna lose my
Yeah,
mind."
no kidding. No
And then they'll
kidding.
do the same thing as always. They'll wait, like, they'll steal something we said 5 years ago and report it like it's breaking news, like they're the first
Yeah.
person to hear about it.
Well,
But it's
yeah.
always we're the people pushing on the Overton window, and we're the ones we were talking about that this morning. It's like a lot of stuff that I said 5 years ago that I said today would have made me lose my platform completely 5 years ago because people
Mhm.
are really open to these new kind of ideas. But we need to go hard in that direction where we're taking it back from the status quo type
Right.
people. The status quo doesn't
Yeah.
serve us. So I was gonna
I
say
was
one more thing. Oh,
Oh,
what
yeah,
was
go
it?
ahead.
When I interview these candidates, like you were talking about, Ellie, I'll interview candidates and I'll send those interviews to the local papers because just like you said, it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's impossible to research candidates. You know nothing
Mhm.
about them. What I found is legacy media will not even like offer a link to this interview for this candidate. It's like, I see you have nothing about this person. Here's an interview, and they won't even do that much. So you have to move on beyond like is it ignorance or is it malice? I think it's deliberate malice where they are
Oh,
controlling
yeah,
all narratives, and the
for
more
sure.
people that are aware of that, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things that legacy media glosses over. A lot of it is just surface level stuff. And when it comes to candidates, it's that way too. They talk about the candidates with the most money more than others. They don't platform the smaller candidates with less money, things like that. So,
Mhm.
but what you're doing is, I think, is priceless. Like, you
Yeah.
can't put you can't put money a dollar amount on that. And I see why candidates appreciate it and why you're getting calls and emails and stuff because I would too, especially we've seen a lot of elections. Everybody sees them locally where you might have 10 candidates, in a primary
Yeah.
and you
Mhm.
only really hear about 3 of them. And, it happens across the board, and it's usually the candidates that have the most money.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
otherwise, I don't really get the thinking behind it other than,
Mhm.
money talks, right? I mean, news outlets have their favorites and, they have their donors and they have there's a whole system behind everything, and it's
Right.
You know,
it's just kinda weird to try to find it all.
that I would have to direct this next thought at Ellie though, because it's like everybody always kind of defers to that, like money talks, but they don't, and it's like, I wanna go back to publishing because we always talk about this. It's like, no matter
Yeah.
how much, I'll write an article that gets shared 250,000 times. Publishers don't even wanna publish a follow-up.
Mhm.
It's sorta like because we assume
Yeah,
that they're doing it because of profit, but I think just controlling us is actually their bigger actual impulse. Like, they don't want these stories out there to be told. They wanna deliberately suppress the candidates that would work for us. I think and a lot of the work Ellie has done is just showing the level of corruption. We
yeah,
we wouldn't I mean, we wouldn't I wouldn't have believed it, and the more we learn about how corrupt things are and just the reality of how rotten the world actually is, so that's coming on your work, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you wanna go back to, like, the idea of publishing and
Yeah.
and sort of make a metaphor out of the publishing industry as compared to, like, journalism, yes, I've had recent conversations where I'm like, "Oh, Walter's right, like, I can't
right.
I don't want you to be right, you're right." Like,
Come
this
to the dark side, yeah.
this idea like, being told that this idea of if you write about A, B, C, and D that is outside this box, they don't want that anymore because they don't want anything that pushes up against the Trump administration, so they're
Yeah,
only gonna platform the things that don't push like, and when
right.
they say politically, they mean anything, you know what I mean? So, like, the book that you've been narrating that I wrote is it's very much delves into the idea of, like, purity culture, which is, I think,
Yeah,
huge news right now considering, like, the Duggars are being arrested again and,
Yeah,
like, all these, the January 6ers are being arrested for like, it's it's a conversation that we should be having, but we're not because we keep platforming this idea of, like, abstinence and purity and the family
right,
values and da 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 da, and that's okay, and yet that is leading to this other thing that keeps happening, and now we have the Epstein files, which directly relates to all of that, but, like, if I'm to write about that, which I have, I
yeah,
continually get told that A, publishers are tired. I've been told twice that they are fatigued with that narrative and the idea of
yeah.
Me Too, and I'm like, "Yeah, so are we. As
That's
women,
why we're
we're
trying to end
fatigued
it,
with
yeah.
it, but
yeah,
it's
no
not
kidding,
fixed, like, it's
no kidding.
still happening." But also that then pushes up again that's political, right? Talking about kids getting abused or, like, this idea of, like, a corrupt the corrupt church. Like, I grew up in the church. I still consider myself a Christian, but, like, this idea that there's so much corruption that is enveloped in your religious beliefs, you can't talk about that because that is too political and we don't that's just uncomfortable. So we're gonna keep talking about teenage vampires. We're gonna keep talking about the things that sell and don't push anybody's buttons. And then that then branches out into journalism, right? Like the only thing that I ever got a bite for submitting to a major newspaper was the one thing I wrote that had nothing to do with an opinion about anything really. Like they were like, "Oh, we
Yeah.
really like this." And it's like,
This
"I've sent you 50 other things that were pertinent, that are things we live with, we are concerned with, and they don't want anything to do with it." And it's just ugh. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, no, that's excellent. That's exactly it. And so much of what we do as writers, you're trying to dismantle the narratives, right? I mean, we see the narratives and it's like,
Right.
I get the pen is mightier than the sword. And these narratives that are just imposed on us. And that's what we come up against all these people that believe things without any awareness of why they believe it. Like today, for example, after talking with Jen Budd, we keep kind of pitching this idea of, hey, we need a DNA database. And whenever you get a rape kit, you get the DNA. And then anybody who applies
Mhm,
for law enforcement or to run for political office, check their DNA against the rape kit database.
mhm.
And instantly I get people saying, wait a minute now, like the
Oh,
biometrics will be,
prophecy,
well, they're like,
prophecy.
biometrics will be used against us. A corrupt government will do this. And I'm just like, okay, so you're basically saying we shouldn't even make guns because guns could be used against us. Hey, now, I didn't say that. It's sort of like they're
Right.
so quick to leverage their
Mm,
arguments to stop these things. Like, oh, that's going to be all kinds of problems. It's like let's just conceive of systems where we actually hold lawless people accountable and
Mm.
mhm,
implement them and change them as needed. But just like deferring to what evil people are going to do, how
mhm.
they're going to abuse good ideas. That's just foolishness. But what do you
Yeah,
think?
I'm all for that DNA thing, especially when it comes to, like, judges and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want a
Mhm,
judge litigating a child, molestation case who might
mhm,
have a case, you know what I mean?
Whew.
mhm.
And that's happened, that
Yes.
kind of stuff has happened. So, yeah, I mean, for lawmakers and things like that, I think so. I mean, cops, hell, you
Yeah.
wanna be a pastor, I wanna check that because I mean, why aren't we talking about youth ministers, man, like, when it comes to this? Because that's and I don't wanna be the
Mhm.
guy,
Nope,
Hey,
don't
look
come,
at the statistics.
targeting
I
me,
just
but,
posted on this, like,
Yeah.
2 minutes
like,
ago.
you know what I mean? Like, I seriously, it's we see it in Texas a lot, like, we're the size of 5 states, so we see it all the damn time, and it's this thing where, for years, I've been saying that I think the idea of being a youth pastor attracts
Sure.
pedophiles, like, they're like, "Dude, that is the opportunity," I
Yeah.
guess, because they're always getting caught, and,
Right. It's a
when
couple reasons. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
finish, I'm
no,
sorry, I
no, but,
interrupted.
like, I look at, the data, because there was all this stuff about blaming trans people and all that, right?
Mm,
And somebody created a database at whoismakingnews.com. And, like, you go there and you look at, like, they have them broken down by political affiliation and things like that, but they also point out that, most cases of, like, sexual assault on children is done by somebody close to them.
right,
And then it's, like, pastors, then cops, then teachers, and, like, the numbers are way up there for all these other
right,
categories that we never talk about. And meanwhile, culture wars got us have us focused on
Yeah.
trans people, which make up, like, less than a tenth of a percent of all the cases on that database, and it's just nuts. It's crazy we
right.
don't talk about it.
Well, I watched a documentary, and I don't know what it was called, it's been a while, but it talked about why there is so much sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and it has to do with,
Mm,
like, this idea of sexual repression, like, teaching you to repress everything sexual in nature. And so you get a lot of people who feel that they're living in sexual sin, and so they decide to, like, I'm never going to have sex the rest of my life, and it busts out
Mhm.
in these really terrible ways. You
mm,
also have people who have, tendencies, like bad sexual tendencies, who then go, I'm going to go to religion because that'll fix me. So you get a lot of people who start going to church who have these tendencies as well, because they think that religion is going to fix their sexual impurity or whatever their thing is. And you end up with a lot of these guys who are pedophilic, who have these tendencies. They go, I'm going to go to church and I'm going to be better, and I'm just going to suppress all of that. And then they end up in these situations where they're on the worship team and they're in the past, youth pastor, and they're doing Sunday school. And you like, I know situations I've in my own church growing up. And but then you get like the Duggars or whatever, where it's never reported, it's never they don't go to actual counseling, they go to counseling through their pastor, and they don't believe the people who come forward and report. Like, the one that I knew was a 4-year-old girl, and she came forward and reported, and she was enveloped by the church. She and her mother were basically shunned from the church, and that was the end of the story, and I never heard from them again. So it's like, that's kind of a typical story because people think that you can pray away this
Right.
idealization of children, and you can't. Like, it's a massive amount of like psychoanalysis, and it's a mental health issue, I believe. Like, it's not something you can go to church and be like, I'm going to be better now. But I think there's a lot of like congregating around religion to fix these things, and thus you get a lot of people with those tendencies in religions, and thus you get a lot of sexual abuse in the church.
That's
I
crazy.
I read an
I never even thought of that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Well, that ties in a lot of what I've been writing about. I did like these patriarchal systems, these authoritarian systems, and we've talked a lot about how they train the people involved in those systems. They have to disregard reality that contradicts the narrative, right?
Right.
Because they just have to be fed, and that's why we always look at it. The far right is always in lockstep because they just disregard evidence, and that gives
Right.
you that rote memorization gives you the appearance of ability. If you learn how to do things, you can repeat them. You don't have to. If you encounter a problem you haven't seen before, you're out of luck. But I know, like, growing up in my family, it's like the patriarchal system is if your dad is wrong, you're not allowed to say anything. You just have to endure whatever the hardship is at that. And it just leads into that where it's like all these systems where then it becomes, oh, you accuse somebody of sexual. I mean, it was to the point of if he was driving into town and he went the wrong way, we just had to wait till he figured it out. It's like, well, okay. And so, gee, is this? And you just
Then
I
get
start
the
do
asking these
remember
questions.
I do remember, like, passing up an exit and not you're just like, "Oh," you just sit there
Just
like,
wait.
"He'll figure it out."
Yes, but then that whole
I remember
structure
that.
though, but then that structure leads itself to when these people actually they
Yeah.
start doing these horrible things, we've already been indoctrinated just not to say things. So
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
one and so we
Yeah,
just see
details.
this whole structure, this hierarchy in our society. We're not allowed to ask questions about an assassination attempt. We're not allowed to look at like the level of things that we're not allowed to ask questions about. And
Right.
I get it all the time on my notes. I actually use notes to just see how the general public is going to react to some of my thoughts and like instantly get all the hostile things. And I've
Yeah.
also found too, like, I mean, you start asking these questions like, yeah, we care about kids. And it's like, what's the number one cause of death for kids? And then you're like, okay, it's guns. And then it's like suicide. Well, we're not going to do anything about that. We're not going to do anything about
Right.
that. And then it's like vehicles. I've said before, we should raise the driving age to 21. If you look at the
Yeah.
numbers there, like all the kids that die, your insurance would go down. It's like one of the top 3 causes of death for kids.
Mm.
People say, oh, they won't be able to work. It's like, well, we would have extra money from insurance payouts from the fact that they're not dying, and then we could just use universal
Can
basic income.
pour it
And they
into,
can
like,
do it.
transportation systems.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
there you
all
go.
these things.
Right,
We're not
at the
allowed
end of
to
the day.
have these this is why we do independent journalists because we can start talking about the yeah, Eric's talking about my hat. No hat. Did it? Yeah.
I remember when they were like, I tell my kids things that like became laws and how people were just up in arms and that we were taking away rights. And one of those was the seatbelt law, like the bike helmet laws in a
Mm,
lot of places, and then smoking inside laws. Like, people went nuts. They're like, "You're taking away my rights." But now they just seem so legitimate, and people go,
yeah.
"Oh, that's just common sense."
Right.
But like at the time, people go, "No, that's my rights.
Yes.
It's my rights to do these things." And seatbelts
Yeah,
was one of them.
drunk driving. I remember when that became illegal,
Oh,
and
man.
I remember on the news people complaining about it, that
Yep.
they wanna
Yep.
be able to drink and drive, and it's funny that we talk about this because it sounds so ridiculous, right?
Yes.
But, like, back then, maybe they thought they were having an honest debate, but, like, as a society, you don't debate nonsensical stuff, right? So we stopped
Right.
talking about drinking and driving. But then
Right.
when it comes to other issues like women's rights or
Mm.
Yeah.
racism or things
Well,
like that, some people just won't shut up about it. They just wanna keep being
Yeah.
and some for whatever reason, we have to acknowledge the nonsense that they're
yes.
spewing and debate it. Why? We don't debate the guys who wanted to drive drunk, right? Why
Yeah.
are we debating
Right.
this?
Well, that's the
It's
Democrats just
stupid.
surrender the messaging, like, our side just surrenders the messaging, and again, this is
Right.
why the citizen
They've been
we're the only ones
gaslit,
talking about things like this, and it's
right?
like, how hard and, they're just like, "Well, we guess we lost the election." They'll say and it's so offensive when they say, the electability stuff, where they say things
Hate
like
it.
and I've heard Democrats say, "America wasn't ready to elect a black woman." It's like, you can't say that.
It makes me
You have
so
to make
angry. It makes
yeah,
me so angry. I
you have
don't
to
care
make
what
America ready then. That's your
I
job,
don't
make them
care what
ready.
the label is. I do not
Yes,
care what the label is. I hear that all the time. I hear it about Pete Buttigieg. I hear about it women. I hear about black women. I hear it
Right.
like constantly
and do the work.
people
Yeah.
on the left going, "We're not ready." And I said, "The
Ugh.
second you say that out loud, put that into the world, then that is why we're not ready." Like, stop saying it and go vote for the best candidate. Like, just stop saying those
Right. Like, I think a lot of people who say that, right? They're it's coming out of their head, right? These are their thoughts. That
right.
means
I
that's
heard
how they
Michelle
see
Obama
it.
say it.
Like, you
Well, they
realize
think
what
it
you're
is.
saying is
Yeah.
racist right now? Like, you don't
Yeah.
think a black woman can be elected because she's what?
Well,
It's
we
not
don't
about
call them
good
out enough.
policy? Like,
'Cause we forget where the fight is. Because the fight is there. The fight is when somebody says that. When somebody says electability, don't say electability, that's racist. I don't care who you claim to be. And we're, like, more concerned about and it's the letter
Yeah,
from Birmingham jail line where
yeah,
Dr. Martin Luther King said, where he's like, "The Klanner's not the one to worry about, it's the moderate." The moderate who likes the passive, unfair, but it's peace, and they don't wanna have that active, justice where we're actually
yep.
fighting for we gotta pick and I guess it's 'cause we do that. I get, "Walter, you're being too divisive, we gotta get together." And it's like, "Okay, you model that for me. You show me."
Right.
It's like, "You start working with me," and it's like they never
I
wanna do that.
That works its way down to, like, the PTA, I will say. Like, I remember in our lives, like, we had a teacher who did some really, like, angry-wise, some inappropriate stuff at school. All the parents got mad, they all got together on the messenger or whatever and was like, "Okay, we gotta go to the school board, we gotta talk." And it became, "Ellie, can you go to the school board and speak for us about this issue because you're the best
Uh,
speaker?" And I went, and guess who did not show up?
yeah.
None of them. None of them showed up, and it was me against the school board. Guess what happened? Nothing, right? The guy kept his job, he didn't have to change, there was no
wow.
consequence. Like, people do that all the time. "Can you please go fight for my kids? Because I can't make it." Like,
Man,
and that is one thing that will make
yeah.
I just will
We're seeing the
when
awakening
it
though,
comes
because and it's
right.
sorta like in school when a teacher would be they'd ask you a question, and then we'd be like, and then they're like, "Well, why didn't you ask me this follow-up question?" It's like, "'Cause you
I
conditioned us
hate
not
that.
to ask
Yeah,
that," you know what I mean?
yeah,
So, the people in our society, in American society, are conditioned to be passive and to just endure being abused
mhm,
like everybody
right.
is, and that's the thing that we're having this great awakening where people are just mad as hell now, and that brings me back to these candidates that I'm talking to. So, I mean, they're just so great. Like, I've never talked to people like these new progressive candidates who are running. I'm just like, "Oh my god, it's actually a real human being who's talking to me and is willing to." I'll ask a question, they'll be like, "Oh my goodness," they'll think things over and stuff rather than just dictate to you and like, "How dare you ask me that?" Because it's off of their list of approved talking points that
Mhm,
protect their power and authority. So
Yeah, I
it
think
is an exciting.
a lot of progressive candidates, like, I think I mentioned this to you recently or somebody, but, we had one of our school boards over here close to my house that was taken over by a bunch of, MAGA
Mhm,
people
mhm.
wanted to ban books,
mhm,
ban certain curriculum, blah, 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 right?
Gosh, yeah.
Well, a couple years later comes around and they all get ousted and they were ousted by progressives. And, we live in a very red part of Harris County in the Houston area. And these progressives, really struck a chord with people. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're genuine, right? They're not media trained. Most
Yeah,
progressives, they're not part of any kind of political group or anything. They're like your neighbors. And like Ellie was saying earlier, I would prefer to have, the AC guy who lives next door representing me in Congress than,
mhm,
some rich, wealthy elite person
yeah,
who's never been grocery shopping.
yeah,
So, I would prefer to see that, and when these progressives came in to the school district and started running, they got people's attention because they were down to earth, they were listening to people
mhm,
and, explaining that this whole panic about books and all this stuff wasn't necessary, and they
yeah,
have a ton of support putting all this stuff back in place. So,
right.
it just the way I see it is, when you have like a Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or Cory Booker or whoever, Nancy Pelosi, who are like just so media trained and they're just almost
Mhm,
robotic in how they talk and respond to things. It's just not authentic. It's not genuine. And I think we live in an era where people are craving authenticity.
Mhm.
And I think that you get a lot of that with us here in independent media.
Yeah. I think I think they are misinformed. These people who are leading us right now are highly misinformed that we're gun shy and we are too scared to see somebody get angry. And so none of them, they're just like this vanilla group of politicians that I go for days at a time and I'm like, I have not heard from that person in a while. Like
Yeah,
some
what the
major
hell?
stuff has happened in the news that's terrible. I haven't heard from this person in like 2 months. Like maybe they're talking somewhere. I'm not like, where nobody's getting mad. We're
Yeah.
getting mad. Like I'm hearing a lot of
Yeah.
independent people getting mad, but like literally the people whose job it is to run the country, I haven't heard from them in like 2 months. So where are they? And I think they think that that's what America wants is to be that, like, centrist,
Yeah.
don't rock the boat, and on some level, we have been very gaslit by the past, like, 2 elections to not ask for audits, to not
Oh,
complain, to not be like them. We don't wanna be like them, so we are going to quietly take everything that happens, and I think we gotta get our heads out of that,
yeah.
there are legitimate reasons to get mad, and there's a legitimate reason to check the last election, and now we're a year
Yes.
in, and we haven't even we didn't do a we didn't do
Yep.
any of that because we were gaslit to not be like them. Like they
Yeah.
did January 6th, so we could never do that. And I think that they now think that that's better. It's better to just like cushion the blow.
Yeah, and at some point, we gotta wonder if it's again, is it ignorance or is it deliberate malice? And that's why I've been using the
Mhm.
term "blue MAGA" because I want them to defend themselves. Because there is a group that it's like, "I make a lot more money when the Republicans win, I get a lot of donations." That
Yeah.
exists, and they should have to defend themselves
Yeah.
against that. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, it's like, we can't be like them, but it's like, why don't we get the rights that the right has? They're still demanding recounts of 2020, and
Yeah.
also just in common sense. It's like, look at how big the United States is. That's a gigantic undertaking. We should constantly be looking for ways to ensure that our vote is counted. And it's like, that's
Mhm.
just common. Yeah, that's just common sense. Double check. And of course, if you're not even checking to see if there was any kind of fraud,
Yeah.
where's the prevention? We're going to be talking next week. This is a preview because we'll be talking what this will hold next week if we get the time zone right.
Right. No, we'll figure it out. We got it. We
Well,
got
that's it.
it.
But, yeah, it's just like you take, like, weird things happen in the elections, like, in Pennsylvania, there was that one senator, the margin was within the mandatory recount. It was so they'd started the mandatory recount, and then he just conceded. The Democrat just conceded. It's like, why would you concede in that situation? Like, that doesn't
Yeah.
fit their narrative. We're like, "We can't be like them." It's like, this got triggered because that election was that close. Why are you backing off now? Especially when there's all these other questions. And we know the Democrats are quick to blame the voters. I always say, voters
Yeah.
gave them all the power they needed in 2020 to change this. Voters demanded that this not happen. They had the power. They could have put the insurrectionists in jail. We did what, the establishment told us to do. And the Democrats are not, they just have to be performative and show that they're defending our vote. Make sure every vote is counted. Because until we do the audits and have the recounts, you can't blame the voters
Right.
if we cast the ballots and then they were discarded because Republicans cheat. They're cheating in the SAVE Act, they're cheating with gerrymandering, they're cheating with voter purges. There's a whole list of how they cheat. And what's just pretending it's not happening is an
Right.
abdication of responsibility.
Yeah, I keep bringing up how Texas is the most voter suppressed state in the union, and I mean it is. We've had a couple dozen laws in the last decade alone, and only 3 weren't considered voter restrictive. So yeah, I mean, when you look at the voter turnout in Texas, like these last primaries, it was terrible, and there's reason for that. It's because it's so complicated to vote, and with all the redistricting, people weren't even sure which district they were voting for. So, they one of the key tricks with voter suppression tactics is creating confusion.
Yep. Yep.
Aside from the most popular weapon is convincing people that their vote doesn't count. And by creating these confusing situations, you just disenfranchising people. And the SAVE Act is gonna make that so much worse for all of us, especially here in Texas and other states and the former slave states of the South where the votes are suppressed really bad.
Mm. Oh, I want to turn to Ellie again. What else is on your mind? So keep going.
Well, I was just curious. I just wanted to like pick your brains about how you feel about the midterms and what do you foresee happening post midterms?
I'm thinking primaries. I'm not even worried about midterms actually at this
Yeah,
point.
I
And I
know.
think we need to look at because we can, everybody be excited because we can vote everybody out prior even to the generals, right? And I
Yeah.
think most of their suppression and cheating tactics, although there's been plenty of cheating in the primaries, I don't feel like
Mhm.
going into it, but that happens too.
Yeah.
But we have to get out. But if I don't think they can handle it. I mean, it always is close and there's selective influence, but if we just get a massive turnout in the primaries, that's the best way. The
Yeah.
establishment will shipwreck, you know? If we just put in a whole bunch of candidates that are just like they haven't been there since this 8-track was new technology. I mean, we were talking about that before
This
the other day,
humor.
Arturo. It's like, "Oh, look, a cassette tape. That's pretty neat
Yeah.
technology." And these are the guys we have regulating AI and, like, manipulation on social media platforms.
Right.
They can't
Right.
attach a document to an email, you know? But yeah, the primaries. But we got to vote, and I think if we do as much as you can to do your hand marked ballots, but it's right wing groups that run the tabulation machines. They own
Yeah.
the voting software. Right wing groups do. For some reason, we're not allowed to talk about that because I guess that's unreasonable. But all the right does is cheat. But still, mobilize in the primaries. I still am confident that we will get our wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
in midterm election mode in Texas because our primaries are pretty
Oh yeah,
much
you're
done.
done.
We
Yeah.
we have the runoff with Paxton and Cornyn, which is kind of funny watching Republicans go at each other because everything they defended themselves,
Oh,
they defended each other over, is now a weapon they're using against each other. It's just crazy. We've been laughing a lot, but
God, they recover from it so quick though. I just
they do, and it's a lot of it has to do with money. I mean, John Cornyn, this was the most expensive Senate primary in history, and most of the money was from John Cornyn, $66 million, and it's just crazy for a primary. That's a lot of money, and
wow.
yeah, you see that. The voter apathy is a big issue, and I think if we can, voters have to be excited about something. They have to be excited about a candidate. They have to be able to feel it um, to be able to get up and vote. And I hope the midterms. I'm pretty confident the midterms are probably going to go in our favor, at least somewhat.
Mhm.
And I mean center left at least. I hope,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just the whole process getting there. You're seeing how ugly it can be, and all these things. And I do have hope that it's going to swing in our favor, but I just not sure I'm thrilled about the path that we have to take to get there.
yeah,
Yeah.
'Cause it was
Yeah.
ugly here. It was ugly here in
Yeah.
yeah.
Texas.
I
What
mean,
thoughts, Ellie?
we just got a new governor here, so and that was a good thing. Got
That's
a nice
awesome.
new governor. It's a nice lefty candidate.
Nice.
But my question is on like a federal giant grand scale, what power we will wield if we get not only Democratic candidates, because like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like, "Are you a
Yeah.
Democrat?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because you get people like I mean, I get isn't Fetterman's independent, but, like, you get a lot of that where people are kinda, like, waffling, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, I think if you get people in here, they need to be
Yeah.
strongly on their side of whatever their side is, and, because I think the only path forward in this presidency is impeachment. Like, I just think that's the only
Yeah.
path
Mhm.
forward
I
if
agree.
this thing is all these things that are getting blocked in the last week, like they blocked the ballroom today or whatever,
Huh.
those things will all be undone if we do this for another 2.5 years. And
Yeah.
so I think the only we have if we get through and we get through with power, like we have chance to do the first like full impeachment and removal from
Yeah.
office in U.S. history, which we've never had before. We've had impeachments, but we could never get through. I think it's the Senate, like we
Yeah.
do it in the House, we don't do the Senate.
Mhm.
But yeah, like that is what I think about. Like my brain is wrapped
Yes.
around it all the time. And then what does that look like if we do that? Then if we go, back to the Epstein files or whatever, are we going to start seeing people fall legitimately, not just for
Right.
tax evasion or whatever they're being arrested for right now? Like, are we going to like see full investigations? Are we gonna see pardons undone? Are we gonna see, like, all these felonies that the president had? Like, are we gonna start seeing, like, justice actually happen for all these things that have been so
Yeah.
ridiculous and so unjust and so, like, illegal? And we just sat back and we're just, like, wringing our hands because the Supreme Court does nothing.
Oh,
Like, they're not functional. I don't know.
oh, well, keep saying that. Let's demand that. And the more
Yeah,
we talk about it and all the wonderful people talking here, and it's gonna happen. That's what we're gonna do, folks.
yeah,
And if we keep talking about it, because the people with the naysayers, like, well, it'll never happen. Well, that ensures it. That becomes a
Yeah,
self-fulfilling prophecy. This
right.
is
yeah.
what, and here's the reality I want to see. You know, you don't need to be a member of Congress to be elected the Speaker of the House. So I want us to win the Congress. Put Kamala Harris as Speaker of the House, then
That would be amazing.
push for this election integrity thing. Then we can remove the entire regime because of treason. Kamala Harris becomes the president, like at 1 day less than 2 years, so she could run for 2 more terms after that. That would piss off
Funny.
MAGA right there, having her run for 2
I need to
additional.
write this down so I don't forget it.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean,
no
look at me.
kidding.
This is
No kidding.
what happen. And then that citizens impeachment, I told you, that wonderful group. And I've already talked to them because what we need to do, it's not just the primaries, it's not just the midterms. We're working for the rest of our lives. This is what we got.
Yeah.
And because even if we get Democrats elected, we can see they can become corrupted by the influences there. And citizens
Mhm.
impeachment was like, we need to impeach Supreme Court justices too. And she,
Yeah,
she went through the whole process. She was the one who wrote the articles of impeachment that got filed a couple months ago, and the Democrats are wringing their hands about it, like,
yeah,
"Oh, we shouldn't do this." And it's like, yes, yes, we should. That's what the people want. So from the primaries, talking about these candidates, and everybody on here, just don't say, well, that's not going to happen. Just say it's going to happen. Just say it's going to happen. Leave it back.
Again, put it out into the universe, right?
yes,
Manifest
yes.
it. Yeah.
I was
Like,
just
make
thinking that. Put it
noise.
out in the universe.
Yes, make noise, stop
Your
being these quiet, embarrassed voters that don't wanna talk, it's that thing we've all been taught, like, "Don't talk politics, don't divide." Like,
talk about
start
whatever you
talking
want.
politics, yeah, start talking about this stuff because it's the only I run into people all the time where I'll bring something up, and I'm not, like, being divisive or anything, but they've literally it'll be some major issue, like, I brought up the issue, like, on our local Facebook page, somebody had announced they'd seen an ICE agent in the town, and we live in a relatively small town. And so I was at the time working at a school, and I just went in and I said, just FYI, because more than half of the students are immigrants, right? And I said, just FYI, this was posted to Facebook, just something to keep an eye on. And this woman looks at me, she goes, well, so what? They're just doing their job, they're just getting criminals. And I said, no, they're literally pulling people out of their cars, like children. She goes, what are you talking about? I've never heard of that. And I was like, "Okay,
Video.
never mind." I just
Uh,
I can't.
Well, what you're saying is super important. It's like,
Yeah,
it's not your fault that other people get mad when you speak a fact.
right.
And we're kind of bludgeoned into believing that, like, oh, I just said something that made somebody else mad. Well, what was the thing? I don't like children getting raped and he's mad and now
Yeah,
I'm supposed to be quiet. It's like we have to reprogram ourselves and we have to allow
right.
ourselves. And it's like I was telling people over the Christmas holiday. It's a powerful thing. You sit down at the dinner table with your family, somebody says some shit you don't like, you call them out on it, and then if they don't respect your boundaries, you leave. And the power of getting up, putting in the chair, getting out of that room, and just holding people
mhm,
accountable for their just repugnant beliefs for a change.
right.
And it starts with the messaging. That's really, really important for people to understand.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah,
hard to yeah, go ahead, sorry.
no, I was gonna say like the story that you just mentioned about people acting like, ICE isn't doing these things.
Ugh.
The other day on Sunday on the political shows, Tom Homan was talking about how no one can point to him a single case of an ICE agent taking somebody into custody in a hospital. I was like, I mean, in under 2 minutes, I found a video. I'm
Oh,
posting it on social media, and I'm like, "Yeah, Tom Homan says, nobody can show him a video. Here's one. I found this in under 5 minutes." And there were so many people in there still arguing about whether the facility is considered a hospital, whether like there was all these
yeah.
different little things there,
Yeah.
and I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" And then other
Yeah,
people started posting more videos and more videos and more videos, and it's like there are a lot of people out there that really believe what the government says, and I'm like,
And they'll
I
only
never
hear
believe
that.
the government.
They won't
Like,
see your videos. They'll only hear Tom Homan because that's the
right,
filter through which they get their news. Yeah.
right, and I don't trust the government. I don't care which president it is. Under Biden, I didn't trust them either. You know, under
Mhm.
Obama, I didn't trust them either. They always lie. So I don't know why, MAGA thinks the government is corrupt when Biden's in office, but not when Trump's in
Yeah.
office. Like, come
Right.
on, man. You guys
Yeah,
are
well,
kidding.
the arguments are frustrating because, you know, for example, I've been doing the Epstein file thing and like,
Yeah.
I have mega family members and it's constantly like being sent a meme, like a homemade AI generated meme and going, "Look, here's the flight log. Look, it's Oprah, Madonna, Stephen Colbert. Like here's the flight logs to
Right.
Trump or to Epstein's Island." And I'm like, "Okay, okay, here's what you got to look at. Cuz here's the FAA flight logs if you want to
Oh, gotcha.
compare flight logs. I've got these too." And it's like so I'm looking at your flight log that you sent me. There's no Donald Trump on there. But yet he's admitted and we have documentation that he was in the flight log. So if he's not in your flight log, that may be an incorrect flight log with Stephen Colbert and Madonna and Oprah or whoever, all the Democrats who were in this flight log.
Right.
And but you can't say that because they go, "Well, how do we know your flight log is real?" And I go, "Well, mine is issued by the FAA." And they go, "Yeah, but that's what they tell you." Like there's no means of saying this is a documented piece of evidence with a file number that is from this government federal agency that has been vetted
Yeah.
and I'm going to hand it to you and it's a hard copy and it's just lots of like, "Well, yeah, but that's what they tell you to believe. Come look at my meme." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Right.
it's just like
Right.
it makes you crazy because it's like, okay, then I can't prove things to you. I can't show you evidence. I can't. So you don't want to know if Donald Trump is actually in these files. You'll never believe it if he is in the files. Like if
Yeah.
he was in front of you doing these things, you'll be like, oh, that's a hologram, right? Like they if you've convinced yourself that it can't happen, then there's no way for you to believe otherwise, even if it's the truth. And then you got to look at your whole life and be like, how are you walking through life like that? Because it's just it's very, very frustrating, but I have to go, like, at what point do I go, "Okay, I'm done talking about this, I have to walk away from it."
Right.
Well, that's really important, Ellie, and that helps me plug your book because your book actually walks people through the process that's
Yeah,
used to indoctrinate them to that level where you become enablers of, child torture and,
right.
child rape and all these awful things, and it's just at so many levels. I've been reflecting on it so much growing up in the rural conservative community where you just, like you can only learn about compassion because of the negative space where compassion was ripped out of your worldview, right?
Mhm.
And the way our society is, American society, they've imposed these false parameters on us. These evil people, they only allow us to see these certain things because if we saw anything else that was possible, we'd start heading down the road that would lead us to realize their corruption, right? And that's why they are so afraid of the humanities and art and compassion and books. And when I was growing up, I would
Mhm.
just carry books around. And it would actually,
Right.
as a 10-year-old carrying around the Call of the Wild, it would scare adults, because in those books, you're able to learn about all the things that they've already like removed from their brains, like
Mhm.
proper development where you can care and have healthy
Right.
relationships. And their inability to have healthy relationships is why they all become child rapists. You hear them say like, "Oh, the ideal age for a partner is like half your age plus 7." Have you ever heard this nonsense? And it's because
What the hell?
I mean, it's just this it's something that was normalized and said,
Didn't
but they
know that
say,
there was math involved.
"Oh,
Yeah,
well, I
no
mean, it's
kidding.
so
I was like,
absurd."
"What?"
But that's another thing they use. They use
Right.
the stuff that approximates like language. It's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it's numbers, so it's like it's baseless." That's
It sounds
grooming people.
smart. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because these conservatives, they're like, you can establish somebody in a relationship like growing up, you love your parents. I love my dad
Mm,
until it gets to a point where it's like, well, this is an abusive relationship, but it takes you like
mhm.
years, like 10 years to figure
'Cause
it
you're
out.
taught that it's not. You're taught
Right.
that it's
And
fine, right?
until you start rattling the cage and forcing, like the
Mhm.
velociraptors in Jurassic Park, testing the walls, you get out like, I need something more than this. And so you
Yeah.
see that and they start preying on younger and younger girls because it's like they'll be 20 and they'll be like, oh, you're going to do this. And then the
Mhm.
relationship will fall apart. Then they're just like, they just keep going younger. I need somebody I need to raise to my worldview. And by the time
Mhm.
they're 60, they're preying on children because they
Right.
become so rotten and corrupt with their thinking that just everything is determined to disguise, their essential corruption
Mhm. Then you add money, right?
and
Then you add
money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
money,
Well, it's
and when you
easy.
add
That's my
yeah, when
line
you
for
add
that is
money, then go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say the ingenuity of the corrupt, they become
Yeah.
so when you're trying to hide a crime, you, like, have all this energy, and so they end
Yeah.
up with all the money because 'cause they're so corrupt, and rational people are just trying to
Mhm.
feed their families, just can't even
Right.
comprehend.
Right. You add in that money and then you add in the entitlement. And then you add in things like, well, I'm a world traveler. I
Mhm.
travel all around the world and the age of consent
Yeah.
here is this and the age of consent here is
Oh,
this. So I'm
yeah,
going to
all
take
those.
that and I'm going to take that back to my hometown and I'm going to feel validated because the age of consent is 14 somewhere. And then you start to hear like people like Alan Dershowitz who are like, yeah, but a 14-year-old girl is so much more mature than an
Uh,
18-year-old
uh,
girl used to be and blah blah blah. And you just hear this like wealthy entitlement of I'm allowed to do this because I'm worldly and I'm an academic
yeah,
and I've seen more than you and I know more than you. And so I can verify that this is okay. You're just seeing it as black and white and it's not a black and white issue. I've seen it and it works,
yeah,
right? And it's just you add all that on top of this culture that already gives them permission anyway if they're like old white men, but like you add $1 billion and then it just feels completely unstoppable.
yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Well, they could
Yeah, I mean, when you look at just how deeply, systemic it kinda was, like, systematic with Epstein, right? The whole process and
Mhm.
how many people were involved and just this giant grand conspiracy, and, it's obviously not the only one out there, and that's
yeah,
what scares me is there once was a time where we thought this was so outlandish, right? Like and then,
yeah,
here we are, and it just the more we learn, the worse it gets, and it blows me away that so many millions of people are making excuses for the perpetrators, for,
Mhm.
Trump, for whoever. I mean, it's
yeah.
insane to me. Like these guys we should be putting them in a wood chipper.
Child
Nothing should.
rapists? Yes, yeah, I mean,
I mean, what the hell? I don't I'm
Right.
just blown away. I really am blown away that like some of my neighbors are probably these people making
yeah,
these excuses because I have MAGA neighbors and
yeah.
I don't doubt some of them are making these excuses online. And it makes me sick to think about that. It's really terrifying.
Eh,
Yeah.
I I've been exploring that too, just the process, because just that process of taking people's, compassion away from them, and you've heard, them
Yeah.
using phrases like toxic empathy, like, "Don't ever examine your actions," and, like, everything about conservatives is to avoid accountability. But then, like what Ellie was saying too, we're all facing economic terrorism. You got the prosperity
Mhm.
gospel where
Yeah.
they can justify abusing people. Oh, that means you've got some fundamental flaw with you, so they allow themselves. But just this structure that allows all this corruption to exist. And then, I mean, right now where they're doing they're hearing arguments about revoking birthright citizenship. That's a gift to child predators. You're stripping a whole generation of children of the protections of a nation. And it's like,
Yeah.
and and the Democrats aren't saying this. I mean, this should be in
Mhm.
their headlines too. Why is the entire conservative movement basically dedicated to enabling child rape? And we're seeing everybody. If you're broke, if you have no other aspects, somebody can roll into town with all of his money and flash it around. Here, I'm your way out of here. And that's what they do. That's the whole process. So but you start talking about universal basic income or anything a government could do that
Mhm.
would help us, and people come out of the woodwork to stop that, in a way that they don't come out to stop the child abusers.
Right. Unless it's on QAnon and unless it's,
Yeah. That's
base
Right.
weird.
if it's baseless, then they're all about it. If it's a social media, explosion, they're so into it, but you hand them like a court case and they're like, "Nah, I
Right.
don't wanna do it."
It disproves their narrative again. The facts that disprove they're conditioned with that, to
Yeah,
disregard the facts that disprove their narrative.
the birthright citizenship case kinda has us in a little bit of a thing because, like, how far back are they planning on going, right?
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Well, they're never gonna
Right.
And
stop.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm the child of immigrants. I could be stateless tomorrow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't know.
My
Uh,
kids have
you
asked
know
that too. It's been on their minds, because
Yeah,
my
I mean,
wife's a
it's
natural
a
exit.
pretty dystopian kind of idea, to think about that, like, my parents and everybody could lose their citizenship tomorrow over this stupid case, and, I've seen all the cases regarding birthright citizenship that go back 150 years, and I've written about it, and, it's pretty much been decided, and I'm not so sure that their argument is gonna hold up, but look at the Supreme Court we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the
yeah.
part that bothers
Yeah.
me because they are such a wild card. Like, I there's no telling what they decide. No telling. No telling. And that's what's scary. Like, you can't rely on case law and previous cases and
Common sense and
right,
decency, yeah.
right, common sense, right? Because you read the Constitution and it's pretty clear. When it comes to birthright citizenship, there's really not much to debate in the wording. So I don't know that they have a good argument, and I'm leaning towards it's not going to hold up. But again, you just don't know with these people. They're
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
we're closing
Sorry.
it we're closing
Sorry.
it at the end of our time. I just
It's
wanted to give
true.
you guys I love you guys. I just wanna say it.
Yeah.
It always makes me feel so much better and just like we're not alone and we're working together and we're seeing progress.
Yeah.
So lovely
Yeah.
to see it. But any final thoughts from you guys? Ellie, you can
Mm.
go
No.
first.
Yeah.
I turn to Ellie.
I don't know. Final thoughts. Do I ever have final thoughts? I just keep going and going and going and going.
Right.
Yeah, for me, I just was probably same thing as you guys. Like, I just turn around and like, what's the biggest impact I can make? And I think for me, it's just talking to my kids about this stuff, talking
Mhm.
how to treat their friends, talking about on their level what this stuff means. Taking them to protests. We went to No Kings, why it matters, why sometimes it feels like a drag, but we go, right? Like, why do I write? Why do I talk? Like, involving them so that they hear it, so that dialogue is in there, so that they go off into the world and they choose how they choose, but they know this stuff and they've heard it and they've seen it in action. And that's like what I feel like is the biggest contribution for me, because at a point I'm not going to be here and it's just going to be them, and then whoever they create if they have kids, and I hope that at some point this kind of boils over and we bring actual real truthful information back to the world
Oh
and we can
gosh.
move forward in a better place, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. My grandma taught me a lot. She was revolutionary, lived in Cuba most of her life. And she led me down the path looking for the right things and the historical context and stuff. And I teach that to my kids like you keep that dialogue going. Now my kids are grown. My oldest is, 28. My youngest is 21. Um, so yeah, they're grown and we have these conversations all the time, and it's pretty cool because they keep up with stuff. They're the internet generation, so they have access to this information. They know what to look for, where to look, and yeah,
Yeah.
when people get mad at me on the internet, right, for like my revolutionary thought or whatever that I might post, I think, to myself, I'm always thinking, you think I'm bad? You should hang out
Mm.
at my house for a day because there's a whole bunch of us over here.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just me. There's an army over here.
Power in numbers.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good to know that like in that sense, we're growing,
Yes.
exponentially. For one of us, we're putting two or three more out there. And now my oldest has two kids and I got grandkids and all that stuff. So yeah, it's just getting bigger and bigger.
Perfect.
Love
I
it.
Very
I
cool.
apologize for cutting you off before too, Arturo. I was getting all
Nah, it's all right. It's all right.
right. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
and like I'm so excited. Exactly what you said. Our kids, my daughter, she just told me she's applied to be the student representative on the school board.
Oh
For the.
wow.
That's
I
so
mean,
cool.
it's they have to determine yet, but I'm just like yes. It's like because she's not going to take any
That's
shit. And
awesome.
yeah, I mean that's what we need. That kind of stuff. That kind of activism, being interested. And the other thing I want to say is like stuff will come on like. For my generation, we know like a commercial comes on TV and you're like, stop paying attention. Like you don't even make the conscious choice. Like once something is a lie, once it has been established as a lie, it takes a little bit of time and we're being
Mhm.
confronted with all these new forms of media, but you develop this ability to recognize, nope, I'm just gonna bloop, like that doesn't even exist. And like songs come on the radio, my kids are like AI. And so they'll like push the button, like not listening to that. And so it's like they do have a
Interesting.
lot more power. They do have a lot more power than we give them credit for. It's like and Lincoln said they can't fool all the people all the time. So I mean, I try to remember that the moments when I'm feeling down, like hopeless, because there's an inherent human part of us, there's a flame that cannot be extinguished. I see it in my kids for sure. So I think there's plenty of reasons to be hopeful. And people have faced these times before, they have faced it. You read Where Do We Go From Here, Dr. Martin Luther King. You read all the dystopian. We watched V for Vendetta the other day. It was
Yeah.
just sort of like, shit, is this just like the nightly news or is this like a
Yeah.
movie? with
I
my
watched
kids.
some of that.
Oh, it's so funny. He's like an angry English teacher, you know? He's
Yeah.
when he alliterates for like 7 minutes straight, and he keeps referring to all these books on the part that they said, "Are you a crazy person?" He says, "They'll probably say so."
Yeah.
Mm.
I felt so identified and seen, so well, that was it. It's always my great privilege to talk to you too. I know I got I'm keeping you up too late
Yeah, it
again.
was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so
I'm
much.
glad to
Bye.
meet you, Arturo. Thank you for
Glad to meet you
hooking us
too.
up and so we could get to know each other.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate your work that you've been doing on the
Thank
Epstein
you.
stuff and all
You
that.
too.
It's not the thing with the Epstein thing is, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual assault, and, like,
Sorry
I
about
just
that.
I can't do it. I
Nope,
can't do it.
nope.
I started
You know
to, and
what?
I was like, "Nope, nope, not for
You
me."
know, and I am very because I know the statistics from my generation, and I'm very blessed to not be a sexual assault survivor, and so I kind of feel like it's a responsibility to take that on because I don't want other people reading this stuff. I want them to be aware and how to protect and how to move forward, but I don't want everybody, like, digging through the files if it's triggering or harmful. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's right either, so
No, yeah, I appreciate some of your posts too. Like, I saw your notes where you were, cautioning people to, be careful of what you're putting out there because
Right.
of people who've been through it, and I appreciated that. That's one of
Thank
the
you.
reasons I really started following your stuff because you were taking that into consideration.
No, thank
So,
you, I
yeah, I
appreciate
appreciate
that.
it.
Yeah, and it's so
Good time, guys.
everybody's activism matters and is super
Yeah.
important. So whether it's
Yeah.
writing letters or going to, demonstrations or whatever, and voting. Vote in the primaries, everybody.
Yeah.
We'll be
Yes,
talking to
please.
candidates.
Please.
Please, yes.
Awesome.
Alright.
Alright,
Peace,
thank you so much.
guys.
Hey,
Love you
guys.
Good to
guys.
see y'all. We'll talk
Yeah.
See
again.
you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
There's the button.